Hello. In our previous video, we were speaking about energy in the human cell, and we made mention of the mitochondrion, the little packet that produces energy for the cell. That was absolutely important as a foundation for understanding energy in virtually every aspect of the human activity. It was important to lay that foundation because without energy, as we mentioned in that video, nothing will work. Today, we're going to be looking at energy and the food we eat. You see, when we eat food, there are certain classes of food that we call macronutrients, which are the big, bulky ones that we have to eat and chew and break down to get to the levels where the body can absorb it and utilize it. They include carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Those are the principal macronutrients. But there are other nutrients that we also need in small quantities that are called micronutrients. If we do not have these nutrients, the energy production will falter, and every other thing that we want to do, especially with providing the energy, would also begin to falter. We're looking today at digestion because it is a critical part of the foundations and the beginnings of energy production. The food we eat and the air we breathe provide the structures for the mitochondria to generate energy. For example, virtually all of the food that we eat gets broken down in the final analysis to glucose, which is the fuel that the body uses, that it burns inside the mitochondria to generate the energy. But it also needs oxygen, which comes from the air we breathe. And when we have these two available, we then need critical nutrients like coenzyme Q10 to shuttle the electrons between the pillars inside the mitochondria. Otherwise, energy will not be generated. But there is something to note again, and this was mentioned in the last video, about the mitochondrion. It was a free-living bacterium, but it was incorporated into the human cell. And once it was incorporated into the human cell, it started to take control of the energy production and became completely responsible for it. Because it came in as a bacterium that was free-living, the mitochondrion kept its own DNA. It's referred to as the mitochondrial DNA. So when the mitochondria begins to get older and begins to falter, like any of the cells in our bodies, it has the capacity to regenerate itself, to create a new one from itself. But like all other cells too, it needs the right nutrients to do this. One of the more critical nutrients that it requires is the coenzyme Q10 that we have mentioned before. Without CoQ10, energy generation will begin to slow down and eventually grind to a halt. But there is another nutrient that it is important for us to note. It is called PQQ, or pyrroloquinoline. This particular nutrient stimulates the DNA of the mitochondrion. And what does that do? It allows the mitochondrion to regenerate, to create even more mitochondria. I had a patient who had a very dicky heart, and his doctors in the United States told him that he needed a heart-lung transplant. That scared him silly. And he sent a message to me that should he or should he not go through with a heart-lung transplant. And I advised him against it. I said he needed to take charge of the energy production of his heart. And I said he should start using coenzyme Q10. And he said, I have been given that, but I'm taking 30 milligrams a day. And I said, you might as well be taking nothing, because you need about 600 milligrams of CoQ10 daily in 2 doses to be able to get enough into the system to begin to push the mitochondria in the right direction. He started using 300 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 twice a day. 3 months later, he went back to his high-rise office in New York and he climbed 6 flights of stairs. All of that without having the heart-lung transplant done. Because he had supplied the nutrients that the mitochondria needed to generate energy, he was able to get the mitochondria to do their job and do it well. Looking at the food we eat now, because without breaking it down completely, we cannot utilize the nutrients in the food. There are things that are important to have. You need to produce digestive enzymes. Those enzymes are catalysts that allow the body to break down the food items quickly. But it takes a lot of energy to produce enzymes. And that is why sometimes when you see a man eat quite a heavy meal, what does he want to do? He begins to feel tired, he yawns, and he wants to fall asleep. This is because the body is taking charge. It says, look, you've put the load inside here for me to break down. I need the energy to do it. So what does the body do? It shuts down all the systems that are not critical to life, and it puts you to sleep. It is called postprandial psychosis. When you fall asleep, it is then able to use the energy from the other sources and direct it towards generating the enzymes that you need to break down the food. If we do not produce enough enzymes, we do not break down the food properly, and all sorts of problems will begin to develop downstream. That is mitochondria, energy, and digestion. I will mention the fact also that one of the important bits of digestion is the acid in your stomach. The acid is there for a purpose. It's protective. It stops bacteria and other microorganisms inadvertently getting into the deeper areas of the gut. But without the acid in the right quantities, the body is not able to break down certain foods, especially proteins. Without the acid, the body is not able to absorb iron. Without the acid, the body is not able to absorb vitamin B12 in the lower reaches of the intestine. So, energy generation is critical, but there are other things that support that, and that is why I mentioned the issue of the acid. When we eat something that disagrees with us and we have a little bit of a discomfort in the upper stomach, the first thing we do is we reduce acidity. We take an antacid. We're not doing the body any good. We need to think of other ways of dealing with signals that the body sends to us when things are not right. Treating the symptoms, like dumping an antacid in the stomach when you feel a little bit of a burning sensation, might not be exactly the right things to do. We must begin to think carefully about what we do when the body is sending signals that things are not comfortable. The other things we're going to look at as we go forward is the energy generation, the mitochondria, and fertility. Without energy, or if there is drop in energy, the first thing that happens is fertility goes out the window. Eggs are not produced, or they are not produced in the right quality or quantity. And then creating the next generation becomes difficult. We shall continue some other time.